The veil tore on the second step. One heel caught on the warped chapel stair, and Evelyn stumbled forward, lace snagging on splinters, her bouquet crushed beneath her fall. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through dry wheat. Her dress was white no longer, mud-stained at the hem, a jagged tear climbing up the side. He didn't help her. Joshua Holt stood 2 paces ahead, jaw tight, hat off, eyes already turned toward the chapel doors. His mother whispered something sharp in his ear. He flinched but did not look back. And then he walked. Right out the church. Right out her life. Gasps turned to laughter. Not loud, not kind. A snicker from one of the groom's cousins. A cough meant to cover a jeer. The preacher stammered, then stepped back into the shadows of the pulpit. No one moved to help her up. Evelyn stood slowly, bouquet still crumpled in her fist. Blood bloomed across her palm, where a thorn had sliced her. The chapel's windows were all open, letting in the dry heat of early summer and the dust that came with it. She walked the length of the aisle in silence, each step a defiance. Eyes bore into her like knives. Her uncle, the only kin left, turned his face. No one followed. Outside, the sun was too bright. She stood alone on the church steps, veil limp across one shoulder, and let the heat swallow her. Until a voice said, "You'll ride with me." He stood a few feet away, beside a chestnut mare. Dust on his boots. Hat shadowing his face. He wasn't old, but something in him felt carved from years. His name was Elias Ward, the youngest of the Ward ranching line, what was left of it. A name that turned mouths shut in saloons. The kind of man who walked into a room and turned silence heavy. Evelyn blinked. Elias didn't move. "I said you'll ride with me," he repeated, not louder, not softer. "Why?" she asked, voice like broken porcelain. His answer was slower. "Because no one else should get the satisfaction of watching you fall twice." She should have said no, should have walked barefoot down the chapel road, and vanished. Instead, she nodded, and climbed onto the back of his horse. The ride was long and quiet. The wind caught the loose threads of her dress and flung them out like surrender flags. Her veil tore free somewhere near Miller's Creek, and neither of them turned back. His ranch lay on the edge of Grafton County, where the soil turned bitter and cattle didn't linger near the fences. One house, weather-worn but upright. A stable. A smokehouse. Fencing that needed mending. Land that stretched far, enough to forget things. He dismounted first. Tied the reins. Didn't offer to help her down. She didn't ask. Inside, the air was cool, the light amber through thick glass. He gestured to a basin. "Water's clean. You can wash." She did. Hands faced the blood on her palm. Her dress she left as it was. When she turned, he was at the table, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. "You live alone?" she asked. "Now I do." Silence sat down with them. Heavy. Earned. That night, he gave her the bed and took the floor. She didn't argue. Couldn't. She lay awake staring at the beams above, listening to the night noises, wind in the eaves, board settling, coyotes calling from far off. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried at all. In the dark, she asked, "Why'd you take me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, because I saw what they did. And I remember what it's like to have nothing left to lose. The next morning, she rose early, washed again, braided her hair tight, found the small garden behind the house, and began weeding without a word. Elias said nothing, just watched her through the kitchen window, then brought her gloves at midday. He didn't touch her, didn't ask questions, didn't offer comfort. She'd have hated him if he had. Word spread fast in towns like theirs. By the 3rd day, folks were whispering in the post office and staring harder when Evelyn walked by. But no one dared speak to her, not while Elias was near. He walked beside her in town like a storm's shadow, calm, heavy, unpredictable. When the butcher refused to serve her, Elias stepped behind the counter, sliced his own meat, left double the cost. When a boy spat at her boots, Elias simply looked at him. The boy paled and ran. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand, but the air bent around him. 1 week in, Evelyn found the torn dress folded on her cot. Elias had stitched it clean. Not well, but honest. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. That night, she stood in the doorway of his room. He looked up from the fire. "I'll earn my keep," she said. "I'm not something to be pitied." His jaw twitched. "Didn't take you in for pity." "Then why?" He stared into the fire. "Because I could not." She nodded once, turned, and didn't cry. Not yet. By the end of the second week, Evelyn had learned the routine. Feed the chickens. Boil water. Split kindling. She moved with purpose, sleeves rolled, dress hem pinned. She fixed the fence post behind the smokehouse with her own hands. Elias watched from a distance, a cigarette dying in his fingers. When she finished, she stood back, wiped her brow, and said, "It'll hold." He nodded once. "So will you." The first time she saw Joshua again, it was at the feed store. He looked thinner, pale. His new bride at his side, quiet, eyes darting. Evelyn didn't blink. Just walked past. He flinched. Elias nodded at the clerk, placed coins on the counter, and turned to go. Outside, Evelyn paused. "You think they regret it?" Elias shrugged. "Don't matter. Regret's just guilt without teeth." That night, she drank coffee on the porch beside Elias. No words, just stars and the creak of the rocking chair. He said, "You staying?" She didn't answer. He didn't ask again, but she never packed. And the next morning, she dug a trench for onions and scattered seeds like she meant them to grow. The Ward house had 3 rooms and no curtains. Wood walls soaked in wind and years. Floorboards groaned under quiet steps. There was no woman's touch, not since Elias's mother died 10 winters past. Evelyn woke early now, always before the sun. Habit born not of duty, but of the need to belong to her own silence. She boiled water before Elias stirred, poured it over the cracked porcelain basin, and watched the steam rise like ghost breath. Outside, the land was brown and brittle. The soil didn't give easily. Elias had said so the night before, that it was bitter ground, soaked in more than just rain. Blood had been spilled here. Fences cut. Cattle run off in the dark. But the bones held. The first week, Evelyn said little. So did Elias. He rode out each morning without instruction. Just a nod. Just a glance at the horizon. She remained tending the house. Not out of servitude, but because she needed something to claim, something to fix. She scoured the hearthstone with lye. Scrubbed the windows until her knuckles cracked. Sewed the curtain seams that had frayed in the wind. And when she passed by the locked door at the end of the hallway, the one Elias never touched, she paused. Only once. Only long enough to feel its breath. He never explained it. She never asked. The town of Grafton watched her from afar. They didn't call her whore, not now. Not with Elias's name keeping their mouths shut. But their eyes still carried the old weight. Curiosity sharpened by cruelty. At the general store, the clerk rang up her flour, without a word. His hands trembled. The gossiping wives hushed when she walked past. One of them crossed herself. Evelyn said nothing, just paid and walked out. By the second week, she wore pants. Trousers Elias had left folded near the barn. Too big, too stiff. But they let her work. Let her move. Her dress was packed away in a trunk now, the one he built for his mother. No one commented on her new clothes. They just watched, waited, wondered. She repaired the chicken coop. Found a dead raccoon inside it one morning, throat slit, flies gathering like mourners. She buried it behind the smokehouse. Didn't tell Elias. Just cleaned the blood and lit a fire to keep the coyotes off. He noticed. He came in that night, smelling of sun and horse sweat, and said, "You seen anything strange near the coop?" She shook her head. Not alive. He didn't press. He never did. Some nights he stayed out late. Evelyn watched the horizon for his return. Not with fear, but with unease. The kind born from too many memories of men who vanished when storms rolled in. One such night, he returned with blood on his shirt. Not his. He didn't speak. Just stripped the garment, hung it over the porch rail, and poured water into the basin. Evelyn brought a cloth. Dabbed his brow, without asking. He let her. That was all. A storm rolled through in the third week. Shingles ripped free. A tree split and nearly crushed the barn roof. Evelyn worked beside Elias all night, hammer in hand, hair plastered to her skull by rain. He didn't ask her to go inside. She didn't offer. They lashed the tree limbs, patched the leaks. When it ended, they stood in the yard soaked through, breathing like beasts. He said, "You hold up well." She looked at him. "I've been held down enough." He smiled, the kind that didn't touch his eyes. Just nodded. There was a map in the drawer by the stove. Inked by hand, yellowing at the corners. Evelyn found it while looking for nails. It marked every acre of Ward land. And one spot, near the West Creek, was circled in red. She asked him about it the next morning. "Old well," he said. "Dry now. Bad place." She didn't press. But that night, she dreamed of water black as pitch and hands rising from it. When the wind changed, bringing the scent of wood smoke from the north, Evelyn knew someone had come near the border. Elias knew too. He saddled the second horse, handed her a rifle. She didn't ask what for, just took it. They rode the ridge together, eyes scanning brush and fence line. No words, no explanations, just breath, leather creak, and the weight of readiness. They found tracks, boot prints too deep for a ranch hand. Fresh, headed toward the creek. Elias said, "Someone's looking to test us." Evelyn said, "Let him." By the end of the month, the house didn't feel like a stranger's anymore. The hearth knew her weight, the stove her rhythm. The soil beneath her fingernails had stopped itching. She slept with the rifle by her bed, not because she feared, but because she would not be caught unready again. Elias still didn't touch her, but when she sliced her hand skinning a rabbit, he cleaned the wound, wrapped it tight, said, "Don't scar too deep." She said, "I don't mind scars." He nodded. One morning, she found a kitten curled under the porch, shivering, blind in one eye. She fed it broth, kept it in a box near the fire. Elias saw it, knelt once, and said, "Ugly little thing." Evelyn said, "So was I once." He didn't argue. When night came again, Elias built a fire in the front yard and burned the bloodied shirt. Evelyn sat beside him, the kitten in her lap. He said, "You ever think about leaving?" She said, "Every day." He nodded, waited. She added, "But not in the way you mean." He didn't smile, but his shoulders lowered. The wind changed again. The coyotes didn't howl, and the soil beneath their boots didn't feel bitter anymore. The first ghost came in daylight. It wore a face Evelyn knew, slack-jawed, cruel-eyed, as if regret had never been offered to the man who'd once dragged her name through Grafton's dust. Joshua Holt. She saw him from the window as he dismounted in front of the feed store. Same crooked stride, same self-importance hanging on his coat, like a medal no one had pinned. He glanced toward her, but it wasn't his eyes that caught her breath. It was the grin that followed. The one that said, "I remember what I did, and I still believe I had the right." Evelyn closed the curtain. Later, she asked Elias, "Would you shoot a man for a look?" He didn't flinch. "Depends on the man." She didn't say Joshua's name. Elias didn't ask. That night, a rock broke the front window. It came without warning, a crack like bone beneath a boot. Evelyn ducked, glass spraying across the kitchen floor. Elias was out checking fence lines. Alone, she grabbed the rifle, crawled, waited. Silence. She opened the door slowly, boots crunching the shards. A note was nailed to the porch rail. "You don't belong here." She burned it. Didn't mention it when Elias returned. Didn't have to. He saw the window, touched the edges, said, "I'll fix it come morning." Nothing more. But that night, he sat on the porch with the pistol in his lap, eyes on the road, jaw tight enough to crack. The next Sunday, Evelyn went to town alone. Elias had stayed back, old injury flaring in his leg. She rode the mule in, coat drawn tight, rifle tied to the saddle. She walked into the church late, eyes already on her. Grafton's tongues had always been sharper than their prayers. The preacher paused mid-verse when he saw her. Sweat beaded on his brow. His words returned softer, less sure. No one offered her a pew. She stood in back, arms crossed. On the way out, a woman brushed past her and hissed, "No white dress can make a snake holy." Evelyn turned slowly. "You should pray louder. I couldn't hear the part where you begged for forgiveness." The woman flinched, looked away. Ghosts don't knock. They slither. 2 days later, the barn was marked. A red cross, crude, painted on the back wall in blood. Evelyn found it before dawn. Elias was still asleep. She cleaned it in silence, using water scalding hot, her hands raw. When he woke, he said, "I heard something in the night." "I know," she said. "I cleaned it." He paused. "You don't need to shield me." "I'm not," she said. "I'm protecting what's mine." He didn't argue. The next night, she laid her knife on the bedside table. Not because she didn't trust Elias, because she trusted no one else. Grafton's cruelty ripened with spring. New whispers, old sins. One man at the saloon muttered, "Whore thinks she's ranch stock now." He didn't get the word out twice. Elias broke his jaw in 3 places. Left the saloon quiet as a tomb. He came home with blood on his shirt again. Evelyn didn't ask. But when he peeled off the fabric, she saw the bruise rising on his ribs. She pressed a cold cloth to it. Neither spoke. In silence, she tightened the buttons on his clean shirt. They didn't say it, but something between them had shifted. The ghost wasn't hers alone anymore. The preacher came to the ranch that Friday. Rode up pale, sweaty, hands shaking. "There's talk," he said. "Folks saying she's cursed. That her presence brings death." Elias stood at the door, unmoving. "You've been warned," the preacher said. "Take it as mercy." Elias stepped onto the porch, looked the man in the eye. "This place survived drought, blight, and thieves. It'll survive liars. You tell Grafton, next time they come, they better bring more than words." He closed the door. The preacher didn't return. That night, Evelyn found a rabbit nailed to the barn door. Still warm. She took it down, buried it under the peach tree. Elias helped dig. No one spoke. The fourth night, Joshua Holt came himself. He didn't knock. He rode to the fence line, smirked, and called out, "Didn't think you'd settle for a cripple with dirt to his name." Evelyn stood in the doorway, rifle across her chest. "I didn't," she said. "I settled for silence. For soil that doesn't bleed every time it's touched." He laughed. Spat. "This ain't over, Eve." "You're right," she said, leveling the barrel. "You're still breathing." He paled, kicked his horse, rode off. Elias stepped out behind her. "He'll come back." She nodded. "So will I." That night, they both slept with their backs to the wall. Not for fear, for readiness. And Evelyn didn't dream of white dresses anymore. She dreamed of ash. And fire. The fire came before the dawn. It started at the barn, licking up the dry wood like it knew the way. Evelyn woke to smoke. Her body moved before her thoughts did. She grabbed the rifle, kicked open the door, and ran barefoot across the yard. The heat blistered fast. Flames danced like demons in a preacher's warning. Cattle bellowed, their cries split the cold. Elias was already there, shirtless, soaked in sweat, hacking at the door latch with a hatchet. "Back," he shouted. "It's gone to hell." Evelyn didn't move. She raised the rifle, eyes scanning the treeline. She saw a figure vanish into the dark. Someone had set this. Someone had come. She didn't follow. Not yet. Together, they pulled open the barn doors. Smoke poured out like breath from a dying god. 2 horses fled into the dark. One didn't make it. Evelyn didn't look. They worked until the flames surrendered to dawn. When the last embers cooled, the barn was a skeleton. Blackened ribs of timber jutting skyward. She collapsed on the dirt. Elias knelt beside her. Neither spoke, because grief comes slow to people like them. The next morning, Grafton was silent. Evelyn rode in with soot still on her skin. The saloon boys looked away. The preacher crossed the street. A woman at the bakery dropped her bread when Evelyn passed. They all knew, and none of them would say. At the general store, she slammed a coin down hard. "Kerosene," she said, "and rope." The clerk hesitated. "Something wrong with your ears." He fetched it, with trembling hands. That night, Elias sharpened every blade. The kitchen smelled of steel and smoke. Evelyn watched him from the doorway. "Why won't they stop?" she asked. He didn't look up. "Because we didn't burn. And people like that, they don't forgive what they can't finish." She nodded. Then she packed a second rifle. Joshua Holt returned the next night. He came alone. This time he knocked. Elias answered with the pistol at his side. Joshua grinned. "Peace offering." He tossed a sack of grain at Elias's boots. "Didn't mean for the barn. That was a boy got brave with whiskey." "Which boy?" Elias asked. "Don't matter," Joshua said. "He's gone now." "Not gone enough." Evelyn stepped beside Elias. Rifle pointed. Joshua's smile twitched. "Don't make this bigger than it is," he said. Evelyn said, "That barn held more than wood. It held years." "Then build new years," he sneered. "Ain't no need for blood." "Some debts," Elias said. "Don't take coin." Joshua's face broke. "You think you're better than us now? That girl." Evelyn fired. Not at him. Just at the ground. The dust spat up at Joshua's boots. He stumbled back, eyes wide. Elias didn't flinch. "That was mercy. You don't get to." Joshua left. Fast. But not afraid enough. That week, the kitten died. It had been Evelyn's shadow. Blind in one eye, scarred but whole. She buried it under the orchard without a word. Elias stood beside her. He placed a coin on the tiny grave. For safe passage, he said. She didn't cry. But that night, she didn't sleep. The next morning, she found tracks near the east fence. Deep. Boot heels. a whiskey bottle half buried in the brush. She followed them. They led to a shack. Abandoned, barely walls. Inside, blankets, a lantern, a journal. She read the first line. She deserved it. She didn't read the rest. Just burned it. When she returned, she had blood on her boots. Elias didn't ask. By midsummer, the orchard bloomed again. The peaches came in sweet, thick-skinned. Evelyn climbed the ladder barefoot, picked until her arms ached. That night, Elias brought out an old jar of honey. They sat on the porch, watched the dusk. "You think they'll come again?" she asked. He nodded. "People like that always do." "Then we'll be ready." They sat in silence until the stars opened. 3 weeks later, a boy wandered onto the land. 14 maybe. Dusty thin. Said nothing. Just stared at the burnt barn. "Lost?" Elias asked. The boy nodded. "Looking for trouble?" Evelyn asked. He looked at her, then shook his head. She handed him water. He drank like he'd forgotten how. They let him sleep near the smokehouse. In the morning he was gone, but the fence had been mended. 2 posts repaired. Nails hammered true. Some wounds don't bleed. Some just change the way you stand. That winter, Evelyn began writing again. Just single lines. On paper scraps. Folded into a tin box beneath her bed. She wrote, "Fire teaches what mercy never could. Ash remembers. The soil's not bitter anymore, but I still am." Elias found one once. Didn't say a word. Just tucked it into his coat. And wore it for the rest of the season. The past didn't come with thunder after that. It came quiet. Slow. Like a man with an old limp and a memory too sharp. But it didn't find what it wanted. It found Evelyn. And what doesn't burn breaks the hand that tries. The season shifted, slow and sharp as a bone setting. Frost crept in around the window frames. Evelyn woke to a house gone quiet with cold. Pipes groaned. The sky held its breath. The orchard stood bare now, its branches clawing at nothing. The wind came in through the gaps in the barn, where fire had eaten memory and timber alike. But Evelyn no longer startled at wind. She startled at nothing. She had grown still in her bones. Elias noticed it, though he never said. Instead, he started boiling the coffee longer, letting the heat hold a while longer in the tin mug. Some mornings, she'd find it waiting by the fire. She never said thank you, but she drank it. That winter, they began to share the chores in silence. More than before. She'd mend the feed sacks while he chopped wood. He'd check the traps while she buried the snares. They moved like shadows beside each other, not quite touching, but never far. One morning, he brought back a rabbit. Gutted clean. Laid it on the table and said, "Looks like snow's coming." She nodded. "We got enough grain to wait it out." He didn't look at her. "You still carry the knife?" She turned to him. "You planning to need it?" He half smiled. A rare, broken curve of the mouth. "Not from you." It wasn't flirting. It was acknowledgement. She passed him salt. He cleaned the meat. That night, she heard him crying. Not loud. Just a rustle. A breath caught and choked. She sat up. Found him on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. She didn't ask. Just rose. Sat beside him. Let her knee rest against his. He whispered, "I didn't save you to fix me." She said, "You didn't save me at all." I stayed. Silence. Heavy. Then his fingers touched hers. Barely a brush. She didn't pull away. He didn't press further. 3 days passed. Snow came down like punishment. The roads vanished. The sky turned to iron. They stayed inside. Mended tools. Mended each other in small, slow gestures. She caught him watching her once. Not with lust. With something older. A hunger not of the body, but of the soul. She met his gaze. He didn't look away. That evening, he lit the fire before she asked. She touched his shoulder. He placed a blanket across her lap. Their fingers met in the space between wool and wood. Still no words. But something passed there. Something that didn't need naming. By New Year's, the thaw began. Small cracks in the ice. Small shifts in their habits. She no longer left the bed before him. He no longer slept facing the door. One night, while washing the dishes, her hand slipped. The knife bit into her palm. She hissed. Dropped it. He was there before she could blink. Took her hand. Held it like it was porcelain. "You're bleeding," he said. She looked at him. "It happens." He wrapped it in a cloth. Tight. Gentle. She let him. They kissed for the first time on the porch. Not planned. Not sudden. She was standing there looking at the stars when he stepped beside her. Close. Too close to ignore. She said, "You ever think about leaving?" He said, "Only before you came." She turned to him, face unreadable. He didn't move. She kissed him, soft, deliberate, then walked inside. He stayed on the porch, heart in his throat. The next morning, nothing was different. Except everything was. They moved slower, spoke softer, touched more, hands brushing, knees meeting under the table. That night, they shared the bed with no space between. Still clothed, still silent. But when she laid her head on his chest, he placed a hand on her back. And they slept like that. Like war had ended. Just for one night. Spring returned with a scream. A fox caught in a trap near the north fence. She killed it clean. No hesitation. He buried it. When they came back to the house, she said, "We should fix that line." He said, "We will." But he was watching her. The way she moved. The way she didn't flinch. She caught his gaze. "You think I'm too hard now?" He said, "No. I think you're what survived." She didn't smile. But she kissed him again. When the first travelers came through, ragged, starving, she offered food. He offered land to camp. One of them said, "You two married?" Elias said, "Not by law." Evelyn said, "By fire." And they left it at that. That summer, they built a new barn. Side by side. Sawdust in her hair. Sweat on his collar. At night, she sat in his lap. Read him one of her scraps. He didn't understand every line. But he listened like it mattered. The quiet between them was no longer armor. It was a home. And in it love grew. Rooted. Real. Not because they needed it. But because they chose it. Every day. Without ever saying the word. The ghosts came at dusk. Evelyn knew before the wind shifted. She felt it in the ache of her shoulder, the stillness of the chickens, the way the trees refused to move. Ghosts didn't knock. But they always came. She sat on the porch, rifle across her lap. Elias beside her, sharpening his old knife, though they both knew it wouldn't come to blades. Not this time. A rider emerged from the ridge. Then two. Dust rising behind them, like old sins. She stood. Elias rose slower. He wasn't the man she'd met. He was something harder. And something softer. "I'll speak," she said. He didn't argue. They stopped 30 paces from the house. Men she didn't know, but knew by shape. Rough-spined, eyes hollowed by need. Led by a man with silver in his beard and loss in his shoulders. "Evelyn Ward," he called. That name still felt new. But she didn't flinch. "I'm her." The man dismounted. "Name's Brant. I rode with Holt." Before he vanished. She said nothing. "We're not here for blood," he said. "We're here for what he owed." Elias stepped forward. "He owed you dust." Brant's eyes flicked to the barn, the orchard, the repaired fences. "He owed us this." She lifted the rifle. "Then dig him up and take what's left." Brant's jaw tensed. But he didn't move. "You think you've won?" he asked. She said, "I don't think. I bury." He didn't reply. Just mounted up. "We'll come again." "No," Elias said, voice like gravel. "You won't." They rode off. Dust swallowed them. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, her hands shaking for the first time in weeks. Elias brought her a tin cup. Whiskey and honey. She drank. He sat beside her. "I meant it. They won't come back." "I know. But it don't end." "Not really." He looked at her. "No. But it slows." She rested her head against him. "And what we do while it slows. We plant." Spring came in heavy. Rains cracked the soil, fed the roots. Evelyn worked the field with bare hands. Elias built a shed. They didn't talk of love. They lived it. One evening, he gave her a ring. Not new. Not pretty. His mother's. She took it. Slipped it on. Didn't cry. But that night, she pulled him to bed and undressed him like she was peeling back armor. No rush. No words. He let her. And when they lay together, it wasn't relief. It was arrival. They built a new fence. Planted corn. Took in a girl left on the road by men who didn't deserve the memory. Evelyn taught her to shoot. Elias taught her to carve. They let her stay without asking why she'd run. Some stories don't need telling. That fall, Evelyn found an old Bible in the attic. Inside, pressed flowers. A letter. Her own name once. She burned it all. Not in anger. In ceremony. Then walked barefoot to the orchard. Laid her hands on the oldest tree. Whispered something even Elias didn't hear. Years passed. Seasons spun. People came through, left behind scraps of pain and pieces of peace. Evelyn grew silver at the temples. Elias limped deeper. The girl stayed, became a woman, carved her own initials in the barn post. One morning, Evelyn found Elias sitting by the creek. Still, too still. She buried him with her own hands. Beneath the orchard, where the light hit soft, carved nothing, just remembered. Now when people ask who lives on that stretch of land past Grafton, they hear, widow, quiet, carries a rifle and a memory. Sometimes they laugh, but they don't approach, because what she's built isn't home. It's a graveyard that grows things, and no one comes back the same.